In April of 1989, a white woman who had been jogging was found brutally raped and beaten nearly to death in Central Park. Not long after the woman was discovered, 4 black teenagers, 1 Latino teenager were charged and jailed for the crime.
I hate the people that took this girl and raped her brutally. You better believe it. And it's more than anger, it's hatred. And I want society to hate them.
Between 14 and 15 years old.
What did you do? Who were you with? Who did you come with?
Been interrogated.
The Central Park 5. Barriers fought so change could be brought. The Central Park 5 case that started on April 19, 1989 in New York broke multiple barriers, such as barriers in court and society. Due to the police blaming 5 innocent teenagers for raping a 28-year-old woman because of their race, it showed society that the court system and authorities can be very unjust and discriminatory against certain races. Because of all the backlash authorities received after this case, it motivated court systems to be more fair and careful of how they dealt with cases. Many activists and citizens have been motivated by the exonerated 5 to fight for justice reforms to continue fixing an imperfect system. The 5 kids who were blamed were Yusuf Salam, who was 15 at the time, Corey Wise, who was 16, Kevin Richardson, who was 14, Antron McCrae, who was 15, and Raymond Santana, who was 14. Yusuf came from a strong family. His mother was a freelance fashion designer, a part-time teacher at Parsons School of Design, and she raised her 3 children on her own. Yusuf was a talented kid as he was accepted into LaGuardia High School of Music and Art, a highly selective public school. He had always enjoyed drawing, making wood sculptures, and taking apart electronics to see how they work. Corey Wise was raised by a single mother. He had 3 older brothers, and he was one of Yusuf's closest friends. Corey's childhood was difficult as he had only recently moved back in with his mother. Before that, he had been living in foster care. Corey had hearing problems, which was suspected to have come from physical abuse, and a few years earlier, Corey was at an amusement park and the group leader molested him. At 16, Corey was a kind, emotionally stunted boy. His development was severely behind, and his ability to comprehend complicated and dangerous situations were terribly inadequate. Kevin Richardson lived with his mother in the same building as Yusuf and Corey, and he was raised to always be polite and thoughtful. He had 4 older sisters who visited often after his parents split up. He attended Jackie Robinson Junior High School, where he played the saxophone and he was on a hip-hop dance team. Kevin was a quiet and respectful student, although his grades weren't the best. Antron McCrae was raised in New York, and before this whole case, he was very close with his father. He enjoyed playing sports and had a hard time in school. Raymond Santana was raised by his father, and he enjoyed drawing and designing from a young age. He lived close to the same building Corey, Yusuf, and Kevin did. One spring evening on April 19, 1989, around 9 p.m., 30 teenagers went to Central Park to hang out. Most of them just came to play sports, as they had often come to Central Park to do so, and it was a holiday weekend, so they were out a little later than usual. The same time the group of boys were there, Trisha Miley, a 28-year-old jogger, got raped and brutally beaten. As they were walking to the park, some of the older kids of the group started pushing and hitting people around them, so someone at the park ended up calling the police and reporting what happened.
At 102 and East Drive in Central Park, it's a rolling band.
The caller gave a description of what he saw and described the scene. He explained to the police he saw 5 young black males and a few Hispanic men. Not too much later, the police arrived, and about 2/3 of the group ran away because they were innocent and did not want to get caught up in anything. The kids also had the instinct to run away because police brutality rates were very high in the late 1980s, and about 100 people a year would die because of police. The police ended up bringing in 14 teenagers to the police station. They were able to sleep during the night, but they had a long day ahead of them. The next day, on April 20th, 1989, at around 1:30 a.m., Trisha Miley's body was found by a passerby at the park, and they immediately called the police as she had lost 80% of her blood. When the police found out about this and got to the scene, they connected it to the group of boys who were at the park the other day, although they were on a completely different side of the park and they had not done any investigating. Later that morning, at around 8 a.m., all of the kids had to wake up and explain their story. The police station was already surrounded with so many news reporters asking questions about who did it and things related to the case. The same day, Yusuf Salam was walking on a street close to the police station with his friend Corey Wise. They were at the park the other day but didn't hurt anyone. Police were out at that time and spotted them walking. One police officer asked Yusuf how old he was. Even though his age didn't match the suspect description, he took him in because he was an African American male. Corey came with Yusuf because he didn't want to leave his friend alone, which in the end was a huge mistake because later Corey will be blamed for raping Trisha. By this time, the detectives working on the case had tested a DNA sample they collected where Trisha's body was, and the DNA did not match any of the boys, so they should have been free at that point, but that wasn't the case. Antron, Kevin, Yusuf, Raymond, and Corey were the 5 boys who were soon to be interrogated. First, their parents had to be called for the interrogation since most of them were underage. Soon their parents arrived and they were terrified. The interrogation began and it did not end for hours. At first, the police were asking questions in a normal way, but when the boys' parents stepped out of the room, things got bad really quick. The interrogators started hitting the kids if the kids would say, "I don't know," or "I didn't do anything," which made things so difficult because they were innocent, and it also violated their 5th Amendment right, which is the right to remain silent and not self-incriminate. The interrogators started making up lies, telling the kids that people told the police they saw them raping Trisha, although no one said that, and they were just trying to trick the boys into agreeing to what they were saying. Finally, the police told them that if they agreed to what the interrogators say, they will go home, so of course they listened, and then they filmed their confession tapes. The leader of the case, Linda Fairstein, made a lot of things up about the case because she was just trying to meet what she pictured the case to be like. She didn't care about the facts, but she wanted the case to go the way she wanted it to go, even if it meant doing illegal things behind the scenes. When the boys' confession tapes were out, there was so much negativity against them. Donald Trump went as far as spending $85,000 advertising to bring back the death penalty. What was so crazy about this is that the boys were so young, it was crazy that people believed that they did such a horrible thing. On April 27th and April 28th, 1989, the boys were indicted on counts including attempted murder, rape, assault, and rioting. About 2 weeks later after that, Trisha Miley was gaining consciousness again, but she could not remember anything from the night of the attack. Over a year later, on August 18, 1990, after a 6-week-long trial, McCrae, Salam, and Santana were convicted of the attack on Miley, despite numerous inconsistencies between their confessions and the facts that were about the case. The location and description of Trisha's clothes that Antron and Yusuf gave didn't match up to what the actual facts were, but that wasn't important to authorities, and they were sentenced to 5 to 10 years in juvenile prison. On December 11, 1990, Corey Wise and Kevin Richardson were convicted. Richardson was sentenced to 5 to 10 years, and Corey, the 16-year-old, was charged as an adult, and he was sentenced to 5 to 15 years. This was very unfair to Corey, as he was 16, not an adult. Imagine being 16 years old and going to jail and everyone thinking you're a rapist although you're innocent and you had nothing to do with the case. Their trials were not exercised equally as the rights of the 5 boys were being abused. The kids were only teenagers, so a lot of information they were taking in during the trials didn't make sense to them. It was literally teenagers against 40-year-olds who were experienced. In prison, Corey got abused by prisoners and guards, and Antron was very upset in prison because he believed that if it weren't for his dad, he would be living a normal life because his dad forced him to tell the police he raped Trisha, and ever since then, Antron and his father's relationship hasn't been good. Overall, Antron, Kevin, Corey, Yusuf, and Raymond's experiences in prison were obviously not the best, but something very important to the case happened to Corey when he was in prison. Matias Reyes was a real criminal who raped Trisha, but that was not known at the time. Matias was a known rapist and had murdered people in the past, so he was sentenced to 33 years in jail on June 5, 1989. In Auburn prison, late 2001, Corey and Matias were at the same prison and encountered each other a few times, and Corey was very friendly to him. After Matias had a conversation with Corey for the second time on June 12, 2002, he felt so guilty that Corey and the 4 other men were being blamed for a crime he committed, so he confessed he was guilty and he raped Trisha Miley alone. December 19, 2002, after a DA's office investigation matched Reyes' DNA to samples they collected back in 1989, Reyes gave a detailed confession of what happened on April 19, 1989, where it happened, and what Trisha looked like, unlike the 5 men who were blamed for this. The truth was finally out in 2003, and a judge overturned the 5's convictions, and they were finally free. There was justice in the end for the 5 boys. However, some people did not believe Matias was guilty and believed the 5 were still guilty. After more than a decade-long legal battle, New York City settled a civil rights lawsuit brought by the Central Park 5 for $40 million on June 19, 2014. They sued the city of New York for discrimination and emotional distress. The 5 men are now living happy lives away from New York. Central Park 5 was very big when it happened, but sadly it wasn't an uncommon thing. In the mid to late 1900s, the Central Park 5 was just following a pattern. Segregation, Jim Crow's laws, the Scottsboro Boys, the Trenton Six, and more are all racial injustices that happened in the 1900s before the Central Park 5. The Maine authorities have gotten better, and although the justice system still has many flaws, we can thank Antron, Kevin, Yusuf, Raymond, and Corey for improving it and helping it grow and making our future as a country brighter.